Frank, these parts get a little sluggish as we get older. They need let's classify the areas, speculate gently those parts. And remember to drink your water throughout the day, at least a quart.
We always look forward to your discussions, Rob, and they were interesting. We got to meet the people. Some of them I still remember, having known them. It was just fun to talk to people from the center, and your topics were good. And I thought they were very stimulating and very interesting. I thought you did a great job. And thank you for making staying at home much more pleasant. We really had a good time.
And you've told stories that I am never going to forget.
Yeah, I had some interesting ones.
You have great stories. You should write them.
You are very creative. By the way, did you know that Superman is up and away? Senior Superman is up and away. What?
Yes.
See, please.
Oh, say that again.
Regular Superman is up and away. Senior Superman is up and away.
Sam was standing outside of St. Patrick's Cathedral on Ash Wednesday, and there was a mob outside waiting for the Mass for the doors to open. And when the doors opened, the mob rushed in, and he got pulled in with the mob. And he came in front of the priest, and the priest put his thumb on his head with some ashes. And he says, "Father, I'm Jewish." He says, "God bless you, my son. Please pray for us." So he goes outside. He says, "I have to tell somebody what happened." He says, "I'll call my wife, Sarah. Sarah, you have to hear what happened to me." He says, Sam, I have the ladies coming from Mahjong today. I haven't had the time to talk to you now. I'll talk to you another time." So I have to just, I'll call my daughter. Sylvia, you have to hear what happened to me. Dad, I have to get the kids off to school right now, and I haven't got time now to talk to you. I have to tell somebody. I'll call my son. I'll call my son. Danny, you have to hear what happened to me. He says, Dad, I have clients coming in a few minutes. I have some briefs. I haven't got time to talk to you. Here I've been a guy for only 15 minutes, and I hate 3 Jews.
Tell me why you came to school.
I like to be with people, and I like to talk. So it's a very good outlet for me.
And you tell fabulously weird and wonderful jokes.
Okay. I'm glad you appreciate it.
Yeah, and where do you live?
In Brooklyn, New York.
And what's this center?
This is the East Midwood Jewish Center.
And this is the second time you've come to storytelling. Do you enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah? Why is it you enjoy it?
Well, you hear different things. Broadens your knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. That's about it.
So why did you love listening to the stories?
I like hearing about things.
Yeah. You haven't stopped what?
Telling stories.
Why?
Aren't you sitting too close? Because it enlarges the...
This is perfect. I get to see you have a very expressive face. What do you like about telling stories?
Oh, what I lived, and what I've done, what I've accomplished, and what I happen to accomplish.
And what about listening to others? Do you like listening to the other stories?
No,
Why not?
I'm an egotist.
Norman.
Can you imagine if this was a therapy class?
That's funny. Tell us a story about growing up and how did a nice Jewish girl like you get to Mexico?
Well, my mother had two sisters and two brothers, and she was the fifth. And from Europe, they came to the United States. And then, for whatever reason, I don't know, they decided to go to Mexico. But my father, I assume, didn't want to go with my mother. And my Aunt Stella used to come in from Mexico occasionally and talk to my mother to try to go back to visit her family. This particular year, my father consented that my brother, who's my twin brother, and I could go back with my mother to visit her family.
Wait, you have a twin brother? I didn't know that.
Yes, he passed away about 4 years ago.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm a twin.
Yeah.
And I had twins.
Oh.
So when we got to Mexico, I lived with one aunt for a couple of years. I don't recall how long. She had two daughters similar to my age. And my grandma lived in an apartment above us. My mother was there, and I assume my brother was also. Now, I was very young, I was very 9, so I never recalled asking where he was or why I was there. I just followed whatever they told me to do. But eventually, I ended up at my Aunt Stella's house, at my Uncle Henry. My Aunt Stella was his salesperson. So from Mexico, she would come to the United States to buy women's clothes because the Mexican loved women's clothing, especially dresses. So she would come and bring him dresses. And they kept, when my aunt came back, she kept asking me over and over again, don't you want to be with your brother? Don't you want to be with your brother? So finally I said, okay, because they always left me in the house alone. And the funny thing is, she had a sister-in-law, her husband's sister that lived across the way from us, who had a daughter similar to my age. She was taken everywhere with her, but I was always left alone in the house. So when they kept asking me over and over again if I wanted to be with my brother, I said okay, because it was better than being alone, because she would go out with the little girl and her in-laws, but I was always left alone, 7 days a week alone. So
Why was that, do you think?
I really don't know. So finally I said okay. It was a Sephardic Jewish boarding school. One side was the girls' dormitory, the other side was the boys' dormitory. In time they closed, and I don't recall exactly, but I know I ended up in they call it the Franco-Española dormitory. It was run by a woman, but later on was run by nuns. And occasionally they would take us to their monastery to visit their Mother Superior and see the dead saints. So,
Were you the only Jewish girl?
oh yes, I was the only Jewish and American. And they didn't like Americans because the Americans came into Mexico at one time.
Right.
And they went up the Chapultepec, which is a very big park. And the Mexicans wrapped themselves in the Mexican flag and threw themselves off the balcony in order not to be taken by the Americans. But I believe at that time America took over Texas. I'm not positive, but I think that's when America took Texas, and that's, I believe. And what is it? I forgot Texas, Texas. So I believe that's one of the reasons they didn't like the Americans. But they never bothered me about my religion. They only wanted to know if I wanted to convert, and I knew it, even at my young age, that I couldn't go back on a Saturday, because I used to visit them on a Saturday and come back Sunday. that I couldn't come back and say that I was of another religion.
Why?
And that's about it. And then I was at 3 different boarding schools, and eventually they told me to come home, and I had ordered a uniform. They wanted us to wear a uniform. We wore a uniform, but this time it was a different type of uniform because it was a different boarding school. I never got to see the dress, the uniform, but they asked me if I wanted to go back to America, and I said yes. So my grandfather, my mother, my brother, and I, we went on a train, and we came back by train to America.
And your dad?
My father was here in the United States. He had come to visit us, but according to him, they didn't treat him properly, so he left and came back to the States. My daughter, who's my half-sister, remained in the States with my cousin. She lived with my cousin Pauline. And that's about it.
Just one question. Why didn't they treat him well?
I really don't know.
Was it the family or the Mexican people?
I have the idea that they resented him. I really don't know exactly. My mother was a good-looking woman, but my father was not really a handsome man. And he had this daughter. How she ended up with him, I really don't know. And why she did, I really don't know. See, now as an adult, I could ask questions, but at the time, I never thought to ask questions.
Okay.